Hi everybody, welcome back to Comicbook.com. I am Logan Moore. I am joined by Chris Killian, and Cade Onder is at home. We are still talking about Marvel Spider-Man 2, the biggest video game release probably of the entire year, especially for our website. We're going to talk about spoilers. Again, if you're clicking on this video, everything's about to be spoiled within the next 10 to 20 seconds, so click away if you don't want to find out what happens in the game. Let's talk about the ending. Let's talk about what they're doing here to kind of lay the roots for the next Spider-Man game. The first thing I want to talk to you guys about is just obviously Green Goblin. Green Goblin does not show up in this game, but Norman calls out the G serum is what it's called. They're calling it in this world.
That's also the same thing that I call my pre-workout. That's what I take.
The G serum.
Yeah.
Before hitting the gym. Mm-hmm. So the G serum. Who's taking this? Norman? Harry?
I'm feeling like, I mean, it's definitely implied that it's going to be given to Harry, but because we're all waiting for Norman, I think that what you're going to likely see is him be some precursor to the Goblin and Norman eventually taking it to become the Goblin, or you're going to see him be a different character altogether, whether that's Hobgoblin or any other established character we can turn Harry into, whatever.
Just bring Venom back.
Yeah.
Somehow. Cade, what do you think about the general Green Goblin tease? Again, you and I talked about this beforehand. We knew, if they were going to use Venom in this game, then that means they're not going to use Green Goblin. Green Goblin's obviously going to be the main villain of the third game. How do you feel about kind of how they're setting this up, generally speaking?
Well, I think Norman Osborn in the first game was very, a cartoony, schlubby, just corporate asshole. Wasn't really I don't see this guy as the Green Goblin at all. And then in the second game, they slim him down a bit. He's a lot more leaner. He looks a little bit muscular, and he's very disheveled, and you can see this kind of rage boiling inside of him. And there's a lot more depth given to him, I think. And I'm like, this guy is definitely on track to be the Goblin.
Though we did talk about that sequence of his rage being a little there's a disconnect.
This is what I was going to bring up.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a disconnect in the sense of if you play the game, you know that Kurt Connors is you got to kill Venom. There's no saving Harry. And then obviously Norman is well, no, save my son. And so Peter saves him. And then
Miles literally brings him back to life.
And then Norman's pissed off about it. He's like, you saved my son. How dare you? It's weird. Yeah. There's a weird rage that kind of clicks over there.
I feel like it would have just been better if they had just honestly just killed off Harry. Maybe that's a little bit of rehashing what happened at the end of the previous game where Peter lost Aunt May, and then at the end of this game you're having him now lose his best friend. Maybe they didn't want to recycle that, but if they would have killed off Harry, I think it would have made for a much stronger motivation of Norman to want revenge on the Spider-Man in the next game, and then it wouldn't have these lingering questions of who's gonna be Green Goblin.
Even when Norman meets up with Doc Ock at the end, and his phrasing of it is they ruined my son. That's their fault.
He already had this terminal disease.
Right. This is so it just that felt a little forced to me, and I agree with you. I think that if they had actually gone through and just killed Harry off, I think the motivation would have been a lot clearer.
You mentioned Doc Ock. Doc Ock's clearly coming back. That's kind of, honestly, the first post-credit scene kind of sucks because he just walks in. He's like, what you doing? He's like, I'm writing a book.
You can't see it.
Yeah, it's a very odd scene, to be honest. Cade, you compared it when we were talking previously about Sony's old post-credit scenes with some of the old Amazing Spider-Man movies. It's just kind of awkward.
I think it's funny that he's like, what are you writing? He's like, the final chapter. And I think it would have been funny if he actually just dabbles in mystery writing now or something, or his fan fiction.
I feel like the final chapter, though, was alluding to the fact that the third Spider-Man game is going to be
it's going to be the last one.
It's going to be their last one. That's how I took it, as a meta commentary. At the same time, though, Doc Ock's clearly going to come back. Cade, how do you think he's going to be involved? And do you think he'll be making an uneasy alliance with Norman?
It's so weird. Like I have said, I have compared this to the old post-credit scenes of some of the Sony Spider-Man movies where they clearly did not know where they were taking it and then never resolved it. Even thinking of Homecoming, when Vulture is in prison and they're like, who's Spider-Man? He's like, I'm not gonna tell you. And then this game, he's like, I don't know, he doesn't seem to resent Peter. I never really totally understood, does he hate Peter or what? Because it's he knows that he did something bad and he was corrupted by these tentacles and he's now not. I don't totally understand his character at this place in time anymore. So that's a little just confusing, I guess. And I don't totally know how they're going to take that in the future. But I mean, I don't really care to see them reuse villains like that.
Well, we've already killed off 3 or 4 of the others, and then Mysterio's rehabilitated, so they're kind of like...
So is Tombstone, right?
Yes.
Tombstone sidebar, I need to know this about you guys and playing. You know, the big suit reveal at the end of the first game was the Doc Ock suit that he uses. Did either of you use that suit at any point during this game? Hell no, me
Absolutely
either.
not.
There's 65 suits, I can't use them all.
Then it's one of the worst ones. So,
nah. The best suits, for the record, the No Way Home suit.
It's awesome.
The No Way Home suit's great.
It's
and
beautiful.
then I will forever be an adorer of the Scarlet Spider suit.
I honestly, like, I love the classic suit but with the black instead of the blue. I think that's such a cool suit.
Too. I saw you use that in your footage. And
That's such a fun game. Oh, we got to talk about the Miles ending suit. How do you guys feel about that?
It's horrible.
That thing is absolute dog crap. I hate that suit, and it's so not necessary. It was almost like it was a bet between them to be like, how can we take Miles' really cool suit and make it infinitely worse?
The fact that he like cut out the top to show his hair that he has is real bad.
Really bad.
I immediately changed it back to like any other suit.
I kept with the default suits in like the final boss fight just because I wanted to like see what it's supposed to look like, so I kept the anti-venom suit equipped and stuff like that, and I allowed Miles to keep his.
I did keep the anti-venom suit because that suit's badass.
But that's actually an awesome
That's a
suit.
great suit.
All right, back to other Indian stuff here. There's 2 other big things I want to talk about. Let's first talk about one more villain thing, Carnage. They kind of set up, this is not at the ending of the game proper, but is instead in one of these side quests. A random cult leader person ends up being Cletus Cassidy, who then steals the red symbiote, which is just kind of falls out of the sky and is revealed to be in this universe kind of suddenly, which is not shocking. I don't know. Symbiotes are always running rampant in Marvel Comics. Do you guys think they're going to do anything with this? Because this is my big question is like, Carnage is such a huge villain that like, I feel like they can't introduce Carnage and not have him be like one of the main villains of the next game, but also they're clearly setting up Green Goblin to be the main villain. So I don't want the Carnage to just be like a side thing.
What I really think it's going to end up being is whether or not they are like, who is the villains that they are setting up for the main story in Spider-Man 3? Who's going to be the DLC that they're going to have, if they have some big DLC planned, I'm sure that they've already alluded to which villain that could possibly be. And so, but I agree with you that you're going to need Venom. So we talked about possibly like, do they introduce Eddie Brock in part 3 and he becomes Venom and then it's like good guy Venom, right? It's more
anti-hero Venom.
It's more anti-hero Venom than it is, Harry doing it. I don't know. Who knows?
Carnage, like you said, is such a big villain, but like I'm thinking back to the first game with Wraith, who shows up in this game, is only in the side quests, right? Like, I feel like they're setting up side quest characters for future side quests, but I'm like, I don't want to see Carnage as a side quest character, but at the same time, like, they probably don't want to do Symbiote as the main story again. Like, it's different, but it's like, I can see them being like, no, we got another thing going on.
I don't even know, though, with Carnage that you need to do symbiote, right? Because I think the issue, like, if you go back to Maximum Carnage, it's just this idea that he's a super-powered serial killer and now clearly cult leader who is just murdering people like crazy, and it doesn't have to be like a symbiote story, even though he's got a symbiote.
My biggest fear is that they're going to combine... Sorry to cut you off, Kate. That they're going to combine Carnage and Goblin and do the Red Goblin stuff, which was introduced a couple years ago, which is not. I don't think that's
you say
very
that, but
well
they gave Venom wings, so
no, I'm not saying they won't. I'm saying don't do it.
That's
because I believe they could.
That's my thing. Is like they've borrowed a lot from modern Spider-Man comics. I've noticed in these games too. So I'm hoping that there's not any huge Red Goblin fans over at Insomniac. I don't know. It would just be a very awkward final boss. Because that's the only way I could see that coming together too. Is like a mesh of the 2 main antagonists of the game then births this ultimate final boss.
Cletus Cassidy getting killed off and then the symbiote going over to Gobby.
Over to Norman.
Speaking of, can we talk about real quick about how Kraven got underutilized? And we're surprised he did not make it to the ending, which is...
I'm not surprised.
You're not surprised?
I always thought he was going to get killed.
Okay, but no, I'm not surprised he got killed. But I am surprised. I feel like I loved Kraven in this game, but I think they could have just gone a little bit further to make him just an even better villain. And I'll use this example. We talked about this earlier, but for me, I didn't feel like there was enough hunting going from Kraven. Now, we know that he kills Scorpion. It's alluded that he kills Shocker and that he kills Vulture. And so I think that if we would have had some boss fights where there's a mixture of Peter trying to save each one of them, and then Kraven comes in at the end, and they're basically like battling, like Kraven's trying to kill them, Peter's trying to stop it, but Kraven just keeps winning and he keeps killing these villains. I think that if you would have included some boss fights in the middle of that, it would have made Kraven feel like a more formidable threat. It would have kind of made him more as a hunter versus like just kind of like him shoveling off all this work on his many hundreds and hundreds
his small militia
of
that he
hunters that he has. That where the hell do those guys come from? I don't know. I get it, it's a video game, but still,
that was going to be my thing, is like the hunting is done by his minions, and he's just kind of they like dump him off into his compound, and then he just delivers
shows up in convenient times.
He just does the killing blow, and that's kind of it. And that was my biggest problem with how Kraven's kind of one of my biggest problems in this game. I like him overall.
He's so close. He's so close to
Yes.
being perfect. That's what's so frustrating about it, is he's right there.
Everything with just Kraven, I think, is great. And then it's all the like going into his hunter's lodge, and there's all these. It's like,
and and like I said, they really just kind of skirted over those villain deaths.
Yeah.
And I think that if they had just paid just a little bit more attention to that and given you, a 20 or 30 minute sequence for each one that you're trying to save them, and you don't, I think that would have just made such a bigger impact.
I wonder if they just didn't want to confirm that like Electro is dead, like some of the, because we see their suits and it's like you're supposed to believe that, but they like have like an out of being like, whoa, we didn't show you the body,
even if it had been, but even if it had just been Scorpion, right, and it just wasn't the one cutscene, because they basically show Kraven kill him. So even if it had just been that one boss fight of like Peter's trying to save him, Kraven's trying to kill him, Kraven wins, I think that would have just given it a little bit more of an emotional oomph.
Scorpion was so heavily involved in the early hours of this game that I really thought for a moment they were going to do the Mac Gargan Venom stuff towards the end of the game. That was kind of, he's just there to get offed by Kraven, and that's it. But that was in my mind for at least a good 4 to 5 hours of this game. That's going to be it for this discussion about the ending. We're going to have one more video here going up on our Comicbook.com YouTube channel where we talk about what we want to see in the next Spider-Man game, which hasn't been announced, but Spider-Man 3 will be happening. And then the big thing that we have not talked about yet that we will over there is Silk, because Silk gets set up, and we're going to talk about how she can possibly be implemented in Spider-Man 3. So be sure to join us for that video here in the future.